Welcome back, everybody, to the Cleveland Cavaliers MyNBA series here for the PlayStation 5, as today we have the NBA draft. This is the third draft of the series, and arguably the most important thus far, considering we have 2 picks inside the top 6. We own 6 picks in total, 3 in the first and 3 in the second, so at the moment, we own 10% of the draft. This draft class is absolutely loaded, specifically at the top, and we've got a chance to get 2 really good players early. Maybe we package some of our assets and move up into the top 2. Maybe we package some of these draft picks and get a really good player who's already an all-star. I mean, we have so many different options in this year's draft, so there are a number of different ways that this draft could end up, and I think there are a lot of ways that would be considered a success. But nonetheless, I mean, there are some really good players in here, some future all-stars, some future superstars in this draft. So I do want to take a look at the mock drafts, because I am a mock draft nerd. Draft Express has the Cavs getting Odavius Shepherd at 4, the wing from high school, James Smith at 6, and Moglak Momodier at 26. 2K has us getting the Sean Williams Garber at 4, the big man out of Oregon. Ruiz Nicolos at 6, so it seems like we're going to go with a guard with our second pick, according to these mock drafts thus far. And at 26, it's Wolf Smith from UConn. And then the other draft is NBA.com. They have us getting Odavius Shepherd at 4. At 6, they believe we're going to select Alex Blackwell, another point guard. So, I mean, we don't really have a true point guard on the team other than Anthony Simons, so I guess I see why. Here's another point guard, Bailey Davison at 26. So, it seems like these mock drafts think that we should look at point. I think adding a point guard, adding a big man, those could be nice, but I think we just have to focus on the best player available. Who we think is the best basketball player on the board should be the selection. As you can tell, we have a bunch of future first-round picks, so we have draft capital to move around the draft if we want. But now that that's out of the way, let's get into the draft itself. Let's officially get this show on the road. But not before I have a major twist to share. The Cavs will be moving up to the 2nd overall pick from the 76ers in a 3-team trade. So the Cavs will be sending the 4th pick, their later 2 second-rounders, I think picks 55 and 59, the Milwaukee Bucks first-round pick next year, unprotected, and a future Rockets second-rounder to the 76ers for the 2nd overall selection. But that's not the only part of the trade. We're going to be sending Anthony Simons to Oklahoma City, our only true point guard on the roster, who we acquired at the deadline from the LA Lakers. So you're probably wondering, why are we giving up on Anthony Simons so early? Simons played fairly well for us, I'm not going to lie, but I think it's worth it to trade him in order to move up 2 spots, because there are 2 elite players in this draft class. So Simons will be going to OKC, along with European forward Dorian Bojic. The Thunder will be sending Luguentz Dort to the 76ers, and will be giving both Philly and us a future second-round pick. The reason why OKC was added into this deal is because the Sixers could not take on Anthony Simons' contract, but they can take on Lu Dort's contract. So that is why the Thunder are needed in this trade. So the Cavs have picked 2, but they're not done making business with OKC. The Cavs are trading the 26th pick and a future first-rounder in 2026 for the 15th pick. So already, a very busy start for Cleveland, and the Cavs now have picks 2, 6, 15, and 38. Now let's get into the NBA draft. The Indiana Pacers are on the clock. Will they select Jeremiah Okoye like expected, Odavius Shepherd, or will they go with a surprise? With the first pick in the 2022 NBA draft, the Indiana Pacers select Jeremiah Okoye from Hillside High School in Durham, North Carolina. Jeremiah Okoye is the number 1 overall pick. No surprise here, as the Pacers go with the player they were expected to take all along, and I think this is a really good pick for the Pacers. Jeremiah Okoye is the true definition of a modern NBA center. He's an excellent scorer from all three levels of the floor. We've seen a lot more playmaking centers like Nikola Jokic, Bam Adebayo. Okoye's next on that list. As a rim protector, he's great. So he really provides all you want, and the Indiana Pacers are getting a great player. So the Cavs are now on the board at 2. Okoye going at number 1 is not a surprise. What does Cleveland do it here? All of the mock drafts have been saying that Zario Papadopoulos will go with the second pick. Granted, those were before the trade. They could go with Odavius Shepherd, Deshaun Williams-Garber. A lot of options here at Cleveland. So let's see what the Cavs decide to do with their second overall pick. With the second pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Cleveland Cavaliers select Odavius Shepherd from O'Day High School in Seattle, Washington. So when it's all said and done, Odavius Shepherd is the guy for the Cleveland Cavaliers. At just 18 years old, Shepherd already has a really good shot to contribute early, as he's already the highest rated player on the Cavs roster at an 85 overall. I know, crazy. In my opinion, this is a once-in-a-generation type prospect, and the last time we had someone as good as Shepherd enter the league, he was drafted by the Cavs, and his name was LeBron James. I'm not saying Odavius Shepherd is the next LeBron James, but you could argue, talent-wise, he's the closest thing we've got. Let's take a look at the film. The Seattle, Washington native, just super talented. He does everything really well. As a scorer, he is great. He can drive to a hole. He can finish. He can shoot from mid-range. He can shoot from 3. As a passer, he's a really good playmaker. At 6'9", he sees the floor well. He can run an offense, and he might be the Cavaliers' starting point guard next year. Defensively, he's not great, but I don't think he will be a liability either, which is certainly a big deal considering the Cavs' defense last year was not great. It's very hard to find a concern with his game, but if I had to pick, it's his weight. 6'9", but he only weighs 180 pounds. In the prospect profile we did, I compared him to a ramen noodle, so he's gonna have to bulk up. Once he does bulk up, he will be a superstar in no time. Grand slam selection here for the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is the man they will build their team around for the next decade. Hats off to Cleveland, you got yourselves a star. With the third pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Detroit Pistons select Zario Papadopoulos from Naftakos, Greece. He last played for Real Madrid in Madrid, Spain. The Greek forward Zario Papadopoulos is a Detroit Piston. This says that he was number 1 in every mock draft, which obviously is not true, but oh well. I don't think the Pistons were expecting Papadopoulos to be on the board at 3, so maybe they're happy, or if they wanted Shepherd, maybe they're not happy. Papadopoulos is very refined as a scorer. He's also a solid rim protector. Not overly athletic. That's the big concern with him. Also has some medical question marks, but other than that, he's really good. With the fourth pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Philadelphia 76ers select Deshaun Williams-Garber from the University of Oregon. I imagine if the Cavaliers did not move up, and we'll assume that Odavius Shepherd was off the board, I think Deshaun Williams-Garber probably would have been the pick. I think he's a really talented center. Although he can't shoot, I think he's athletic and versatile enough for a modern NBA. It seems like the Embiid-Simmons pairing is just not working in Philly. So this pick tells me that they're leaning towards building around Ben Simmons and potentially looking to trade Joel Embiid pretty shortly. With the fifth pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the New York Knicks select Elijah Ejiofor from Duke University. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got ourselves a trade. The New York Knicks will be trading the draft rights of Elijah Ejiofor to the Charlotte Hornets in exchange for Lonzo Ball and some random named Joseph Pierce. So essentially, the Knicks, who had the worst record this season and were projected the number 1 overall pick heading into the draft lottery, have turned that draft pick into Lonzo Ball. Not great, and for storyline purposes, Lonzo and LaMelo are no longer teammates, which is kind of sad, but it's a good move for Charlotte. They don't really need Lonzo Ball. Get themselves a high-ceiling player in Elijah Ejiofor. I don't think he would have been the pick to Cleveland at 6, but he's a really talented player, one of the biggest draft risers this season, and Charlotte's young core is really good. With the 6th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Cleveland Cavaliers select Farek Nwora from Louisiana State University. Very interesting pick here for the Cavs as they select Farek Nwora out of LSU. The best perimeter shooter in the draft. He does not miss from mid-range, nor does he miss from 3, and I think early on he can be a microwave scorer off the bench. But the question is, can he be more than a scorer? The Cavs have a lot of good wing players who can score the basketball, so I see why one would question this pick. He's also only a 74 overall, but he does have a lot of potential in my opinion, and although he has a lot of room to grow, he also has a lot of things he needs to improve on. Obviously, as I mentioned, he's a knockdown shooter. I think he has versatility to rock out as the point guard and the 2 guard. He's not a great playmaker yet, though. He doesn't see the floor overly well. I think he's better off coming off the bench as a shooting guard. I don't think it would be good for him to really have to worry about running an offense, because I think that might be overwhelming for him early on. But I think if he can develop that within the next couple of years, then maybe he can be the franchise point guard of the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I think him and Odavius Shepherd can be a nice duo. Both of them could potentially be good playmakers and ball handlers if Nwora develops that. Defensively, Nwora is not great, to say the least. And, I mean, he's not an overly big guy. Stands at around 6'4", 193. He's not small. He's not small, but he's not big either. And he needs to play bigger. He needs to play tougher. And he just needs to improve on defense. I think early on he might be a liability on that side of the floor. And the Cavs already are not great on defense, so he's going to have to improve there. But if he does, I think he will be well worth this selection for the Cavs. With the 7th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Memphis Grizzlies select James Smith from the University of Connecticut. This was supposed to be Utah's pick. The Jazz finished with the 3rd worst record in the NBA. The pick was top 5 protected and ended up at 7, so it's going to the Memphis Grizzlies, and they will be selecting James Smith out of UConn. The Smith brothers, James and Wolf, both out of UConn. James is the better prospect of the two, but expect Wolf to be drafted in the 1st round as well. I'm sure the Cavs considered going with James Smith over Nwora. It's very close, and Smith is really solid. With the 8th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Sacramento Kings select Jalen Chambers from Minnehaha Academy in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Jalen Chambers here is built like a tank. 6'9", 251 from Minnehaha Academy. I think this is a really solid pick for the Sacramento Kings. This young man has a really high floor, and I really like his game. Very good scorer from inside the arc. Does need to improve on his three-point shot, and I wish he was more versatile defensively. Great inside, and I think if he becomes a good perimeter defender, then he's going to be in this league a long time, but I really like this pick for the Kings. With the 9th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Toronto Raptors select Evian Bradley from the University of Kentucky. If you're a Cavs fan who's pissed off about the Farek Nwora selection, then I don't think you're really going to like Evian Bradley, because a lot of scouts think he's arguably better than Nwora. Bradley is a really solid value pick here for the Toronto Raptors, who may look to enter a rebuild, as they're just not the same championship contenders that they were a few years ago. Bradley is a really good offensive player. He's a great scorer. He's also really a playmaker. He sees the floor well, and I think he's a little bit more ready for the modern NBA than a guy like Farek Nwora, even if Bradley has the lower ceiling. With the 10th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Houston Rockets select Milo Beauregard from Strasbourg, France. He last played for Ratio Farm Ulm in Ulm, Germany. The Houston Rockets are in a very weird position. Obviously, they have both James Harden and Paul George, but they don't really have a ton after that. So they may be looking to enter a rebuild as well, because it doesn't seem like they're going to really enter a championship contention with this core. So the first young piece they're going to add is Milo Beauregard, the rim protector from France. Offensively, he doesn't provide a ton of value. He's not much of a playmaker or a scorer, but he can grab boards down low. He can be a lob threat. and he's pretty athletic. So I don't think this is a terrible pick for the Rockets. I think he's going to be a really good player. Maybe a poor man's Rudy Gobert. The 11th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Atlanta Hawks select Tyrese Davenport from the University of Kansas. This might be the first really surprising pick of the night. Tyrese Davenport was not projected to go off the board until the second round, so I'm very surprised he's off the board at 11. Remember, last year the 11th overall pick was Preston Stallings to the Jazz, another player who wasn't projected to go until the late first, early second round. You want to know how Stallings' rookie year went? 0 NBA minutes. Hopefully for Davenport, it's a little bit better, and on the bright side, unlike the Utah Jazz, the Atlanta Hawks are title contenders, so if this pick flames out, it's not the end of the world. With the 12th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the San Antonio Spurs select Cameron Bowman from the University of Memphis. I actually find this pick really interesting for the San Antonio Spurs, getting Cameron Bowman, who is a really good offensive player, one of the best scorers in the country. He's also a really good passer as well, but he sucks on defense. The Spurs also have DeJounte Murray at point guard, who's one of the best defensive players in the NBA. Offensively, Murray isn't bad, although I don't think he has the capabilities that Bowman does. So I think having these two at point guard is a really interesting fit. Also doesn't look like the Spurs plan on retaining Russell Westbrook in free agency. With the 13th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Oklahoma City Thunder select Avo Blackwell from the University of Kansas. I talked about the Smith brothers earlier, but how about the Blackwell brothers? Avo and Alex, two projected first rounders, as Avo goes off the board here to the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think Avo Blackwell is a little bit raw, and I think right now his twin brother Alex is actually the better player. But Avo Blackwell is a really high ceiling, and the Thunder do want to get another wing with the loss of Luguentz Dort, obviously, since he was traded to the 76ers. With the 14th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Washington Wizards select Ruiz Nicolas from Bordeaux, France. He last played for ASVEL Basket in Lyon, France. This is an odd pick here for the Washington Wizards, and it's not that they're picking a bad player. Ruiz Nicolas is actually quite good value here at 14, but the Wizards tried drafting their franchise point guard last year in Tremel Baxter, and Baxter had a really good rookie year, so I don't really know why they're going with another point guard. I guess they're just trying to go best player available. If that's the case, then yeah, Nicolas might be the best player on the board, but I don't really know how he fits in a backcourt with Tremel Baxter and Bradley Beal. With the 15th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Cleveland Cavaliers select Mamadou Enechiania from Calabar, Nigeria. He last played for FC Barcelona in Barcelona, Spain. The Cavaliers have had 3 top 15 picks today, and all 3 players they've drafted are wings, which is ironic because the one thing the Cavs don't really need is wings. So I see why someone might be confused here with these selections, but it's very clear Cleveland is trying to go with who they believe is the best player on the board. At just 19 years old, Enechiania here has the chance to be a really, really good basketball player, and I think he's good enough to crack the day one rotation as a solid bench player. I think the main reason why the Cavs drafted him is because of his value on both sides of the floor. He can shoot the ball really well, specifically from 3, but he's also a fine mid-range shooter and can drive the hole and get baskets. Defensively, he's quite a solid perimeter defender. Now, one could argue that somebody like Kristoffer Oddmarsson out of Iceland might be a better pick because he's a really good defender, but Oddmarsson is not a great scorer, and it's very clear that the Cavs want to have a roster of basketball players who all know how to score the basketball. It's clear that the Cavs want 5 players on the floor who are all threats to score, and that's exactly what the first 3 players the Cavs have drafted so far. If you look at Enechiania's build, he has very broad shoulders, and for lack of a better term, he's thick. I'm just going to say it. He's a very thick man, and I think he has the potential to be a really good defender in this league with his broad shoulders, his long arms, and his muscular frame. Out of context, those past few words sound really weird, but just go with it. With the 16th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Minnesota Timberwolves select TK Kabokime from Mississippi Valley State University. TK Kabokime here is another player who I imagine the Cavs were heavily considering with that 15th pick, because Kabokime is a really good player, and it's pick 16. This is a steal in my opinion for the Timberwolves. This is a really good offensive player. He's super athletic as well. Defensively, he's not great, and I think that's why the Cavs opted to go with Anechi Onia over Kabokime. Regardless, I don't think the Timberwolves are too upset because they've got themselves a really good player. The Timberwolves just made the finals last year, and they're getting another player who can provide early minutes. With the 17th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Milwaukee Bucks select Wolf Smith from the University of Connecticut. James Smith was drafted by the Grizzlies, and now one pick ahead of Memphis goes Wolf Smith to the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks don't have the same amount of depth that they had 2-3 years ago, so I think Wolf Smith can be an early contributor for this team. At the moment, it's just Giannis, Chris Middleton, and Drew Holiday really carrying this squad, so they're going to need some young players to step up early, and I think Wolf Smith can be a solid glue guy early on in his career off the bench who can provide valuable minutes as a two-way player for Milwaukee. With the 18th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Memphis Grizzlies select Art McFarland from Oregon State University. Art McFarland will actually not be going to Memphis. Instead, he's headed to Sacramento. The Kings will be trading up 17 spots from 35 to 18 and will be sending Danilo Gallinari over to Memphis. I understand Gallo's probably around 35 years old at this point, but has his value dropped this much? I understand the 18th pick is a nice asset, but the Grizzlies are also getting a high second rounder in return, so I don't fully agree with this move for Sacramento, although I do think McFarland is a fine draft pick. He does need to grow a head of hair, but other than that, I think he's a pretty solid basketball player. With the 19th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Orlando Magic select DeKalen Savage Jr. from the University of Kentucky. The Orlando Magic need to take a swing for the fences because they don't really have any franchise-changing players, and I think this is one of the better swings you can take at this point in the draft. DeKalen Savage Jr. was the #1 ranked high school player in the high school class of 2021, and his stock slipped a little bit. As you can tell, he's still a first-round pick, but he's not going as high as we expected him to at the beginning of the season. However, I think at 19, this is a really solid value pick for Orlando. The 20th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Charlotte Hornets select Tomar Wuzlov from Frankfurt, Germany. He last played for the Frankfurt Skyliners in Frankfurt. Tomar Wuzlov is one of the more polarizing players in this draft class. Scouts either think he should go in the top 10, or scouts either think he should go in the second round. Personally, I would say I'm in the middle, and I think this range is right around where he should go. So I think the NBA kind of got it right of where Tomar Wuzlov should be drafted. Going to the Charlotte Hornets, they now have two talented rookies in Elijah Ejiofor and now Wuzlov. And I mean, Charlotte's young core continues to get better and better and better. With the 21st pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Brooklyn Nets select Kristoffer Oddmarsson from Husavik, Iceland. He last played for Alba Berlin in Berlin, Germany. The Brooklyn Nets are laughing at the other 29 teams in the NBA right now because Kristoffer Oddmarsson is a top 10 talent in this draft class. There is no way he should have fallen to the 21st pick, and the Nets are just going to scoop him right up. Best perimeter defender in this draft. He's a really good playmaker, and at 6'8", he's kind of a poor man's O'Davious Shepherd. The only big problem with Oddmarsson is that he has a funky jump shot and cannot shoot the three. But other than that, he is really darn good. Steal for the Nets. Absolute steal. 22nd pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Dallas Mavericks select Alex Blackwell from the United States. He last played for Maccabi Tel Aviv in Tel Aviv, Israel. The other Blackwell brother is off the board as Alex will be headed to the Dallas Mavericks. Now, Alex Blackwell did not play at Kansas with Avo. He actually played overseas in Turkey, so very different direction for these two twins, but they're both first-round picks, so I think it all ended up pretty well. The Mavericks do have Kyra Lewis Jr. at point guard, so I imagine Blackwell could be a solid backup behind Lewis for the foreseeable future. 23rd pick in the 2022 NBA Draft. For Brooklyn Nets, select Blair Blue from Navy. I'm not really sure what to make of this selection. Blair Blue will be fighting for the Navy or doing something with the Navy for the next year, so he actually will not be an NBA player until the following season, which is a little bit odd. Talent-wise, he's really good, but I just don't really know about his future with Navy and basketball. It's just all really confusing. With the 24th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Portland Trail Blazers select C.J. Cruz Jr. from the University of Oregon. Many reports say that the Cavaliers were highly considering moving up towards the late first round to select C.J. Cruz Jr. However, he will be staying in the state of Oregon, going to the Trail Blazers. C.J. Cruz is the perfect backup for Damian Lillard. He's a well-rounded offensive player, very experienced at Oregon, 3-year player. He's the best perimeter defensive point guard in this draft, which I think more so goes to show how bad the perimeter defenders in this class are, but this is a steal here at 24. Excellent pick for Portland. The 25th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, Miami Heat select Jalen Carroll from Mississippi State University. Last year in the first round, the Miami Heat selected Houston's point guard Dino Dixon at pick 20. Now they're drafting another point guard in Jalen Carroll. I think Carroll was a good player, but Dixon didn't get any playing time last year, so what's to say that Carroll's going to have a role this year? I do think Jalen Carroll has a lot of potential. I think he's a little bit better of a prospect than Dino Dixon, but regardless, very strange, but not terrible pick at all for the Heat. 26th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Oklahoma City Thunder select Bankston Cannon from the University of Illinois. Bankston Cannon is the lowest rated player drafted so far, but don't let that distract you from the fact that this is actually a really good player. And I think this is a nice pick here in the late first round for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think Cannon has a really high floor, and I think he's going to be a really solid role player in this league. I think he could be a great backup for Spencer Dinwiddie and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at that point guard spot, so not too bad of a selection in my opinion. The 27th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Chicago Bulls select Carlos Rosa Santiago from Indiana State University. I'm not surprised to see the Bulls going with a big here. Lauri Markkanen and Wendell Carter are both free agents in the offseason. I think Carlos Rosa Santiago is really solid. I think he could replace Lauri Markkanen at the power forward position with his offensive abilities. There's a really refined scorer. He does have some work to do defensively. I wish he was a little bit more versatile, could defend the perimeter and inside. But other than that, I think this is a fine selection. With the 28th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Atlanta Hawks select Moglak Momodie from Lagos, Nigeria. He last played for Fenerbahce in Istanbul, Turkey. Nigeria now has two players in the first round. Mamadou Anechonia went at 15 to Cleveland, and now Moglak Momodie is going to the Atlanta Hawks. Moglak is a little bit raw. He's actually a really good three-point shooter, but outside of that, he's not great at the moment. I don't think he's going to get a ton of playing time early on, but I do think he is nice upside, and I think he could be a solid two-way player in this league for quite a long time. With the 29th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Denver Nuggets select Carl Lewis III from Los Angeles, California. He last played for Sudbury 5 in Sudbury, Canada. I don't really know what to make of Carl Lewis III because he's actually a 77 overall, which is super good value here in the late part of the first round. But if you look at his attributes, outside of rebounding, he's not all that spectacular. Now, granted, he is a ridiculously good rebounder, and rebounding specialists still have a role in today's NBA, but Lewis is not great as a defender. He's not a phenomenal scorer, so if he's just there to grab rebounds, then I don't know why he's a 77 overall, but here with the 29th pick, I don't blame the Nuggets for going with a high floor player who may never develop into a great player, but he has a specialty, and that's cleaning the glass. And with the 30th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Boston Celtics select Bailey Davison from Virginia Tech University. The final selection here in the first round is Bailey Davison out of Virginia Tech. I think the Celtics could use a backup point guard for Kemba Walker. I think Davison could be just that. The Celtics drafted 3 wing players last year, including Isaiah Thomas, who obviously was traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers in exchange for Romeo Luguancho, another wing player. So I think Boston could have looked at a big here, could have looked at a point guard, and indeed, they do go with Davison. So that will officially complete the first round here of the 2022 NBA Draft. For the second round, I will not go over every pick because I know that would be super boring. So I would just go over our pick because that's really the only interesting one. So obviously it was a very busy first round for our Cleveland Cavaliers. We had 3 picks, including selecting O'Davious Shepherd, 2nd overall, Farek Nwora with the 6th overall pick, and then at 15, Mamadou Enechionia. I know the positional value doesn't really make a ton of sense because we don't need wings, but the idea here is I wanted to draft who I thought was the best player on the board and players who had potential on offense and defense. I know Farek Nwora sucks on defense, but I do think he has potential there. So I think it's a good first round here for the Cavs. They have picked 38 in the second round. Let's see who they will end up selecting with that pick. With the 38th pick in the 2022 NBA Draft, the Cleveland Cavaliers select Zion Hopkins III from Lake Norman Christian High School in Huntersville, North Carolina. Zion Hopkins III here is a very interesting prospect. As you can tell, apparently he was a walk-on at high school. That doesn't really make sense. 99% of the American people don't get paid to go to high school. But, oh well, it is what it is. So he's a 74 overall, 73 with -1 morale for whatever reason. And, I mean, he's a weird player. There are a lot of D minuses, as you can tell, so he's super raw. He's probably not going to get a ton of NBA minutes as a rookie, but at just 19 years old, he does have potential. I think going to college for a year or two probably was his best bet because he is super raw for the most part. He's not a great playmaker. He's not a great defender. He's not a great three-point shooter, but he does have a specialty at the moment. That's driving to the hole and scoring from mid-range. He does not miss from inside the arc. He's a phenomenal mid-range shooter. I don't know how he's such a great mid-range shooter, but just cannot make anything from deep. He's super athletic. He can find the cup. He can throw it down. He didn't dunk it there, but he does go for a nice layup. And I think him going to the G League early on will be his best bet, considering he's definitely not NBA ready. But he has a lot of potential, and that's what this pick is for the Cavs. They're going with a player who has a very low floor, but a very high ceiling. And 3 years from now, Zion Hopkins III could be out of the league. In 3 years from now, he could be a starter, and a high-level starter at that. So I think here in the second round, it's like, why not? You might as well take a player like Zion Hopkins III. So that will complete the second round. A lot of good players in this round, too. Cedric Garrett's brother, Dexter Garrett, went at pick 41 to the 76ers. Just a few picks after Zion Hopkins. I wouldn't be surprised if Dexter Garrett would have been the pick to Cleveland had Zion Hopkins gone off the board. But the Cavs pretty much have a full rotation of guys for the most part, and we haven't even entered free agency. Garrett is a high floor, low ceiling guy, so I think that's why the Cavs opted for Zion Hopkins over him. So that will conclude the 2022 NBA Draft. Our Cavaliers ended up with 4 players: O'Davious Shepherd, Farek Nwora, Mamadou Enechionia, and Zion Hopkins III. 4 very interesting players who all have the shot to be really good, and I think this draft was a massive win here for the Cleveland Cavaliers as they continue to stock up on young assets to help this rebuild going forward. We're going to look at everybody's draft here, team by team, if there's a specific team you're curious about, if there's a prospect you might have missed. or if you want to see who your favorite team drafted. Obviously, this is a really good draft class in the first and second round. The amount of 70-plus players in the second round is really interesting. So we might have more good role players in round 2 than normal. And obviously, the first round was loaded, specifically the top. I think Jeremiah Okoye, Odavius Shepherd, and Zario Papadopoulos are all number 1 overall picks most years. However, they just all happen to be in the same draft class this year. This is also probably the first time that the top 3 picks all did not play college basketball. Obviously, the first 2 players drafted were out of high school, and then Papadopoulos played internationally. The first college basketball player picked was Vashawn Williams-Garber at 4 to Philadelphia. So that will conclude today's episode. Next episode, we will go through the rest of the offseason, most notably free agency. We have quite a bit of money to spend, considering our 2 most expensive players are Odavius Shepherd and Tharek Nwora, who we just drafted. We have a lot of cap hits as well from guys who probably aren't going to return next year, like Romeo Langford, Marc Gasol, Zeke Nnaji. So that 11 mil is going to be bumped up, and we're going to have a lot of money to spend. Hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Greatly appreciated, because obviously this video took a very long time to make. I'm out. Peace.